I'm super excited to introduce this panel. Well, we're calling it a fireside interview today, which will be moderated by Liz Dartnell, who is the Executive Director for Sexual Violence Research Initiative, and also a member of our advisory group. So one of those fierce 14 feminist leaders. So Liz, over to you to take your session, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Muthoni and Lara, and welcome everybody to the launch of the Our Future is Fearless campaign led by the Global Accelerator for Gender-Based Violence Prevention. And congratulations to the dream team behind all this work, that you've all worked so tirelessly to make this all happen. As Muthoni has mentioned, I'm Liz Dartnell, the Executive Director of the Sexual Violence Research Initiative. The SVRI, we are a feminist organisation headquartered in South Africa, working globally to build partnerships and advance knowledge building in low and middle income countries to really redress the systemic inequities in resources for research and evidence creation between high income countries and low and middle income countries, where to this day, research priorities, research and knowledge building continues to be led more often than not from partners in high-income countries, far from the communities for which research and knowledge is supposed to serve. So the synergies between the SVRI and the goal of the Global Accelerator for GBV Prevention is just one of the many reasons I got involved with this really important work. That only by working together and developing a global shared advocacy agenda with multiple voices saying the same message, can we mobilize more and better resources to prevent violence against women and girls. And of course, being part of the accelerator has meant working with really many fabulous people in the field, and we invite you all to join us on this journey. And today's panel is about that. The panel brings together activists, researchers, advocates, and movement builders with one thing in common: a powerful commitment to end gender-based violence in all its forms globally. Today, you're going to hear from 4 powerful practitioner, researcher, activists whose work has been instrumental in advancing our understanding of what works to reduce violence against women and girls. We will hear from them about what prevention means to them, how it should be funded, and what difference such funding could make. We also want to better understand from our panelists what they are hoping a shared advocacy agenda can do to help them in their own work. I'm really honoured to introduce you today to today's panel. They're amazing. So we have Jean Kemitare, Programs Director of the Urgent Action Fund based in Uganda. Welcome, Jean. We have Wangechi Wachira, from the Executive Director from CREAW, the Centre for Rights, Education and Awareness in Kenya. Lovely to see you, Wangechi. Ghida Anani, the founder and director of Appiah, the Resource Centre for Gender Equality in the Lebanon. And welcome, Ghida, if you're there. And we also have Dorcas Appiah, the Executive Director of Gender Studies and Human Rights Documentation Centre in Ghana. Welcome, Dorcas. And a very, very warm welcome to you all. I want to ask all of our panelists that in one word, how can a platform for collective advocacy like Our Future is Fearless campaign support your work? I'm going to start with you, Jean.
Amplify.
Welcome, Ghida. It's nice to have you. Jean, in one word, I think we missed the word. There was a little bit of feedback.
How about this?
There's a little bit of an echo. So while we're sorting out your sound, I'm going to move to you, Wangechi. What's your word? How can the Future is Fearless campaign support your work in one word?
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm struggling with the one word, but for me, I think for me, it's more voices really to be able to amplify that there is more that need to be done around prevention and violence against women. So more voices to advocate for this.
More voices. I love that. And Jean, what's your word? Let's see if we can get you to not echo anymore.
Yes, after Wangechi stole one of my words, it was amplify. And I'm hoping that the campaign and the whole platform of the accelerator can really amplify the voices of community-based feminist activist groups, organizations, and all other voices for better and more funding for, women's rights organizations that are actually at the front lines of the work.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Wangechi. We obviously shared in our want to amplify multiple voices through this platform and this campaign. Ghida, what is your one word?
Well, actually, there's a lot of echo, so sorry for that.
It's okay.
Yeah. So really, for me, when we say like in one word, like a future, if I got the question, because I'm hearing two things, I don't know what it is. Okay.
I wonder if Kim can help on just it's one word about how
Yes.
a platform for collective advocacy can support your work.
Well, actually, it's a kind of platform for sharing the learning, and it's a kind of like reaching to resources beyond borders, especially for us in like connecting across different and different sides of the world, but around one really one collective effort. So for me, in one word, it's simply power.
Power. I love
Yeah.
that word. A brilliant word.
Yeah.
Amplify, multiple voices, and power. So from those wonderful words that you've shared with us, which I have no doubt will be incorporated into the Future is Fearless campaign, I'm going to now turn the panel over to our fireside chat to answer questions to each other. Unfortunately, Dorcas has not been able to make it. So Ghida, if you wouldn't mind just taking over Dorcas's question and hand over to me. So Jean, I'm going to start the questions, and I'm going to ask you, Jean, as a feminist and as a funder, what are you most interested in funding when it comes to the prevention of gender-based violence?
All right, I'll speak first, and you're right, I'm a feminist. First, have been in the violence prevention field for over 12 years. Now I'm working with a funding organization. Urgent Action Fund Africa is a Pan-African feminist rapid response fund, and our work supports women human rights defenders, feminist activists, and the movements to which they are part of to take advantage of strategic and planned opportunities that arise to advance women's rights. The funding we provide catalyzes action towards long-term transformation of power, which is actually what prevention is really all about, and thus prevent violence. We complement our rapid response grants with accompaniment support, and that's providing not only resources, but political and technical capacity as well. And in addition, linking to longer term funding, because ours is catalytic rapid response granting. Similarly to the global statistics that were put, 30% of our funding addresses GBV. And of course, with COVID, we see that we've had an increase in a whole range of health, economic, and human rights crises. And as a result, we've had an escalation of applications coming our way to address GBV. We see that most of the applications are focused on raising awareness. And yet we know that prevention is way more than awareness. And we'll hear from colleagues like Wangechi, who thankfully is one of our partners, what they're doing, in terms of prevention that's beyond awareness. But unfortunately, most of the applications are, focused on raising awareness. From analyzing our work, the trends analysis of our work, we note that there are strong linkages that we would like addressed between structural and interpersonal violence. Defenders facing violence from the state are also faced with intimate partner violence and other types of violence from the community and the household. The increased emergencies and crises in the region have escalated sexual and intimate partner violence and have also escalated homophobia across the region, which is marked with increased threats and actually direct attacks on LGBTI and non-binary defenders. We are most interested in funding work towards mobilizing, consciousness raising, building and strengthening diverse politicized movements as a sustainable approach to preventing GBV. We also invested heavily in holistic security and care, because that we know is what sustains the frontline activists, the defenders, in order to continue with the pushback. And this is very important, especially at this critical moment in time when global and regional trends indicate backlash and a threatened rollback on some gains made by decades of feminist organizing. All this work and hopes and dreams need resourcing. We're excited about the opportunity that the Accelerator for GBV Prevention and campaigns like that, Our Future is Fearless, which name is really symbolic in this moment in time when we are reeling from the Wade versus Roe, court ruling. So we're excited that of the potential that this campaign and the platform presents for upscale of philanthropic advocacy and amplifying voice and agency, to have better and more funding to enhance the political analysis, like I mentioned, moving us beyond awareness and other capacities of feminist organizations grounded in community and at the front lines of violence. And I'm really excited that we have CREAW, who, as I mentioned, is a partner of Urgent Action Fund Africa, but also is a partner of many here and has done a lot of great work. We know that preventing GBV is possible. We are going to have a bit more nuanced discussion around this. And I would like to ask Wangechi, at CREAW, what are the 2 most promising strategies you have adopted towards prevention of GBV?
Thank you so much, Jean, and I'm very honored to be here. I work for an organization known as Center for Rights Education and Awareness. We are a feminist organization based in Nairobi, but also working in different parts of the country where we have our footprints. In our journey, one of our strategic focus is on violence against women, on prevention, but also response. For very many years, our work, we did a lot of response. And then the analogy of the river, we are on the downstream. So once women were violated, then we would be able to represent them in court, provide psychosocial support, and of course, then be able to refer them to other institutions, whether it's the police, the medical institution, and all that. But we started a journey to be able to find out who is up the river and who is violating the women. And within the region, we looked at what are the models that are working. And what warmed our heart is Raising Voices in Uganda had already done or developed a model that is SASA model. I believe is a model that is now globally known, and we celebrate the work that Raising Voices really have been able to do. As an organization, then we adapted SASA approach, and we did some work in Nairobi, in one of the areas where we operate in Kemitare. And this was supported, and I'm happy because even as we speak today, the prevention of violence against women is not a one-off activity. I think, Jean, you've already highlighted, raising awareness does not prevent violence. There is so much more that needs to be done. So we were supported for a period of 4 years. And within that period of 4 years, so critical 4 years to be able to then be able to do the adaptation of SASA model. And what we saw as an organization, we saw a reduction of violence to about 24%. But also as an organization, what we also did is to be able to adapt the model in 10 other counties where the organization is doing, have some work that is going on there. And for us, what's very, very important is the SASA has a component that looks at community mobilization. Very, very important, because as violence is happening, especially intimate partner, a lot of violence happens, a lot of community, a lot of neighbors know it's happening, but they don't do anything about it. So we started the community dialogue so that then we can be able to ensure that when violence does happen, that there's something that is going to be done. But also we are going to speak about what are the issues that are driving violence so that then we can be able to talk about them. And I must say that as a result of adapting SASA is that one, we had then communities starting to change their attitude around accepting that violence should happen, especially intimate partner violence. And then we also saw something shifted that as a result of this work is that when violence did happen, people were not silent about it. They would speak about it. They would be able to refer. In fact, as an organization that is already doing response, we saw the cases increase. At one point, we had our outreach office almost receiving 16,000 cases. And this is because you could see the mind shift the mind has shifted. They were now talking about violence happening. They were doing something about it. So for me, I think the SASA model is a really powerful model. I know it has gone a number of revisions now. It's SASA Together. And it's a model that we can be able to adapt and really for where we're doing community mobilization, where we are doing community activism, because then you have community beyond the grant period that are going to be left in the community and they will be able to advance that piece of work. So that's about SASA. You asked me about two models that organization has adapted. Our second model focuses on cash transfer. And cash transfer, again, has been evaluated. Give Directly has actually evaluated, they have implemented and evaluated the model, and it was seen to reduce violence from between 30 to 50%. Now, 2020, the first COVID or case of COVID is reported in the country, in Kenya. And the government of Kenya put in then the measures to be able to reduce, sorry for that.
No problem.
Yeah, so the government of Kenya then puts measures to reduce the spread of COVID. And one of the measures that was put is, for example, the lockdown. And subsequently, what we saw as an organization that is on the forefront, we saw a lot of women are not able to travel out of the counties where lockdowns had been put in place. And then we started conversations with our partner, how can we support women who are going through violence? And we then, because we're already receiving cases of women who are going through violence, we had from our partners, and what we did is then to be able to support survivors so that then they could be able, and they had also lost their income, meaning they have no income. And we targeted the most marginalized living in the informal settlement in Nairobi. And we also did the same in Mombasa. So we did a cash transfer of about $76. And this we did for a period of 3 months. And some of the powerful stories that came from women is that if we're going through violence, then they'll be able to free a home that is very, very violent. What we also see is that there were bills that had not been paid. And the women then were able to buy food. They were able to, to do the basic that every human being need to do. And also for us, and these are stories all coming from the women, that it gave them dignity, that instead of going to their home and deciding what is it they need, it gave them dignity that I have these $76. I can be able to prioritize what I need as this woman who is going through violence. Do I get out of this environment and move to another place? So for me, cash transfer continues to be very, very powerful. It can be upskilled to a national level because we have social protection programs within our country. So it can be upskilled so that as they do the other vulnerable groups, that survivors of gender-based violence can be considered and can be supported so that if they're going through violence, they can be able to make different choices. They can be able to have agency. They can be able to have dignity because they have money with them. And also given that as a country, for example, a lot of people own their phone, meaning that this money you can actually send it using M-Pesa for us was very, very powerful, because the infrastructure already exists. They already have a phone, so you only disburse the money to them, and quietly then they make a decision. They even don't need to they don't need to go announcing that I'm going to receive their money, because they leave it at they receive it at the comfort of their home. So for us, the cash transfer really worked during the crisis of COVID, and is a model that it will be able to upskill to other parts of the country or the world. In the interest of time, I'm now going to move to the next speaker. And I'm very, very excited because she has done powerful work. And in a question for you, with survivors of gender-based violence to challenge the negative social norms and reinforce gender-based violence in your context. What are some of the key important lessons you have learned in your work, especially on preventing violence against women? So over to you.
Thank you so much, sister, actually, and I'm really honored to be part of this quite exciting and enriching platform alongside like really activists in that field around the globe, and to launch a much needed, I have to say, platform and really launch a focus and an initiative on an aspect that I do believe that we have been so slammed and drawn in really healing survivors and really working on supporting the women that are affected by this like really disgraceful and shameful violation of their rights, of their bodies, and also living that aspect of discrimination and inequalities for years, while we forgot about maybe, or like the time did not allow, like really the focus and the investment and prevention, where we really can reach a point and live in our communities where we shouldn't even think about the incidents of gender-based violence, where everyone is really living in side by side as real partners and dignity being really protected. Everyone is communicating and condemning the use of violence, and really everyone is educating others. So having said that, for us, like as organization based in Lebanon, but also serving the Middle East and North Africa, of course, challenging and working on social norms was kind of accompanying our interventions and our strategy. Abad being an organization using a systemic approach in our interventions, so really working on different layers of the system, in addition to provision of specialized care and holistic care to survivors, but also to those committing the violence. So we also run centers for men under the preventive work, and we were trying really to address the root causes of gender-based violence, really trying to go and campaign on trying to change attitude, practices, and behaviors, starting from some work on the curricula in schools, but mainly through the public opinion and behavioral change campaign. I would like to share with like really colleagues some of these learnings or lessons learned that we compiled for years. And I always like to summarize these by the 3 Ps, which is the power of data as number first. Like really one of the biggest learning for us was, if you are trying to influence any kind of social norm or trying to reform in the legislations or policies, something that is deeply rooted even in the mindset of the stakeholders, that is very hard to come and say, yeah, it's our right, if you don't like have the power of the data put in the forefront, starting with a survey or with an opinion poll to give a number saying, well, this is how much is happening, or this is the cost of this violation, or to say this is how many are in favor of that change. So number one is the power of data. That was at the basis of all our advocacy work that really influenced a change in the Lebanese community in reforming multiple legislations, where we always started by very straightforward number. Second is the power of people. Also, one of the biggest learning was if you were trying to change something in the life of the people, as feminists, yes, of course, we're in favor and we're representing or trying to push forward, but we shouldn't forget that it doesn't mean that we have to do things on behalf of the population and the right holders we're serving. So by the end of the day, if our motto is empowerment, we need really to apply that belief and even in our advocacy and reforming work. So being patient, taking the time needed to accompany the right holders concerned, for them to be really ready to come forward, to be in the forefront, to advocate for their own concerns, to speak to stakeholders, and at the same time having everything designed around the people and starting with them and ending with them. All our campaigning was, even with survivors of rape, we had them in front of the parliament. We had them speak to the parliamentarians. We had them speak about the costs of what happened on their own lives. So the people-led approach, it's not something we need just simply to say, or the survivor-centered approach only in case management in our field of GBV. This is really even an advocacy in prevention. That power, you cannot imagine how much it's time effective, cost effective, and really drive the change. Lastly is the power of integrity. The power of integrity meaning influencing negative social norm. Really, if you want, like, the opposer to listen, credibility is at the basis. And to gain credibility, we need to ensure integrity across all time and across all layers, even if this sometimes like is something that is not easy for us as feminists to do. So if you're saying we're preaching something in our dailies and in our advocacy work, we need to practice in the tiny detail of all what we do. Like, really, this is what they're calling for. Because the moment where there's a jeopardize on that level, this is a gateway where they're gonna come and say, like, but the feminist groups are like, I don't know what they're actually manipulating us or trying, like, actually to liberate the society. These are trying to empower women and to leave their husbands, and so on and so forth. All the misconceptions and the, like, all the attacks that we have, I think, common around the globe. So integrity, and that all combined by a clear vision, like cumulative work and really passion. This is how, for us, we were able to have some breakthrough on the level of ending sexual violence and sexual assault in the country, trying to introduce sexual education in school, and even have criminalizing sexual harassment in the workplace. And today we're even able to speak about early marriage in the public space as part of the sexual violence also component, and push the things forward. So I'm gonna stop here. I know that we lost, like, a dear colleague, Dorcas, is not with us to share about some important, like, really work, but I hand it back to you, Liz, and happy to discuss further.
Thank you, Ghida. I think the question was from you to me would be, what am I most excited about?
Yes, exactly. Now, it's the one thing that what actually you would prioritize if you have more resources on the level of GBV prevention work. What is the one thing that you would really prioritize if you have more resources?
I think that was Dorcas's question, but
yes.
My question was, what are you most excited about with regards to this initiative and campaign? And then we can come back to Dorcas's question, and if we've got time, we can all try and answer that. So while I'm speaking, maybe we can think about that question, and I'll ask the panelists what their thoughts might be. If we have more funding, what would we use it for GBV prevention? So thank you so much, Ghida, for the questions and raising up those issues. For me, what I'm excited about is that what Jean mentioned when you were speaking, Jean, was that the overturning of women's rights to bodily integrity has been a really difficult thing for all of us this week. And so now more than ever, I think we need to be fearless in our commitment to end violence against women, promote women's rights, and gender equality and support all of you in your incredibly important work. And we need fearless support to do this from our funding partners. And it's so wonderful to have one of those fearless funding partners on the panel with us today. Thank you, Jean. I think what's really important for me about this campaign and this initiative is that we can only succeed if we work together. The Global Accelerator and the Our Future is Fearless campaign provides us with that platform. And we have the tools to really build on, and we have the expertise and skills in the field. We know we can reduce violence against women and girls. We have the work of the CREAW and the Quality Institute that we spoke about earlier on the collective identification of what the field is saying is important. We have research on funding that shows us that violence against women programming on prevention is woefully inadequate and very poor. And we know that even that evidence building and building knowledge on what works to receive even less funding. So we need more advocacy to highlight the gaps, to highlight what is not being funded and what we need more funding for. And one of in the earlier panels spoke about, she said, we should not be asking for crumbs for this essential work. We should be brave and fearless in what we ask for, and to ask for what we need to do our work well and in a sustainable way. And we have guides for funders on how to support this work, our work, ethically, and we need to advocate for them to be using and engaging with us on what we see as ethical funding in this work. And we need to disrupt the way in which the priorities for funding is set, whereas you on the ground must be setting those priorities. And together, as I said, we must be fearless. We must coordinate and streamline our advocacy messages for more and better resources. So please, all of us on this call, we want you to join us to help us ensure that violence prevention remains visible and on the radar of funders, and to elevate and build our diverse community, a connected and diverse community working in service of women and girls. But I have one more point that I'd like to make, which does resonate with what Jean was talking about, and also what Tinatswe mentioned in the chat, that rest is resistance. The importance of collective care. It is something that the SRI has been working on for a number of years now, that we do this work because we care, and because we care so much about the work, we often don't take care and kindness as a priority for ourselves, and we don't always value collective care, and we are at risk of vicarious trauma. So as we do this work, we must celebrate our wins, support each other in our losses, and collectively care for each other as we do so. So I think we have 1 more minute left on this panel, and I wonder if in just one word, if Jean, you could say, what if you had further resources, what would you use them for?
Further resources, of course, is a dream for a funding organization like ours.
Yes.
There's so many things that would use that for. One, I talked about capacity. There are a range of initiatives that are out here that are providing capacity support to organizations that are engaging in prevention work, because it's much easier to understand and fund response than it is to understand and fund prevention. The outcomes and outputs are intangible, right? So that is something we would, that would be really good to invest in, those providing capacity to organizations doing prevention, so that we move beyond awareness raising to deeper, more politicized work. And there are many organizations that are already doing this work, like CREAW, like a colleague, what she was talking about, but we don't have enough. And that's because they are not funded enough. Large pots of funding go to organizations that work in a certain way and operate in a certain way that many times, unfortunately, may not be grounded in community. So that would be it, as well as, of course, funding further.
Thank you, Jean. That was a one long word, but I do appreciate that. Wangechi, what would be your multiple one words if you had more funding?
I think for me, the evidence is already out there that there are models that are working. So I'll just get the models to be done, because the work, the evidence exists. organizations are ready to do the work. So for me, it's really to move from the money is available, let's get the work done. I think also for me is also to ensure that as we're doing this, we're also looking at how to do self-care for the people who are on the front line, because there are so many out there doing this work with very, very little resources. Women's rights organizations do a lot of the weightlifting. They step in a gap where governments are not supporting. So I think it will be very, very important that as we support women's rights organizations, that we also have a component that looks at how are we dealing with self-care. They're out there willing to do the work, but is not fully funded. So with extra funding, which will go to the self-care of this organization, but also get the models that within the region are adequate to run this work.
Thank you so much. So scaling up, sharing, expanding, and taking care of ourselves and our teams and the people we work with. Ghida, what would you be investing in when we have when we've reached our goal and have multiple funds to do this important work?
Yeah, actually, I would say like actually just the investing more in school curricula. For me, like and the investment in if I have more resources, I think the starting early in schools and really investing in the education system across, like really the curricula and then the education team, and then we're working with parents alongside, of course, some of the work with the traditional media. But this is where I would actually invest more.
Amazing. I really, really support all of the ideas that have been put forward. And I just want to add on, around starting young, we need to start early in childhood, through parenting interventions. We need to do a lot very often and over a very long period of time. So on that note, I'd like to really thank all of our panelists for your thoughts, your ideas, and for you so generously sharing your wisdom today. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Wangechi. Thank you, Ghida. And I look forward to continuing these discussions in different platforms and in different ways. And I'm now going to hand back to you, Mathoni and Lara.